Hello, can you hear me? Is it loud enough? So what I want to do is just sort of talk about my, sort of give you a personal tour of my life, what I've looked like over the years, some of the things I've done. And so you see pictures of me at various ages, even when, just to show you how I've changed. Of course, I've changed. My hair's gray. When I started, it wasn't gray. I didn't have hair. So let's see. If I want to make this move, okay. So now the first thing is that's a picture of me when I was in elementary school. PS 197, Brooklyn, New York. You notice the pompadour? People had more pompadours back then. I don't know if they do it nowadays, but I had a pompadour. I grew up in Brooklyn. I went to James Madison High School from 1954 to 1958. Among the other graduates of James Madison are Carol King. She was in my class, and her name was Carol Klein. And so she was right near me in the yearbook. I knew her not that well, but anyhow. Bernie Sanders went to Madison. He's actually, believe it or not, he's younger than me. And he was in the class behind me, and I never met him. Never met him, and I found out he went to Madison, the class behind. And then there's Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who's one of my heroes. Now, she was not in my class. She's at least maybe 15 or 20 years older, but she's one of my heroes, on the Supreme Court. So they all went to Madison. I went to undergraduate at a small college, Hamilton College in upstate New York. Very cold up there, very cold. Not that cold here, up here. I also was in upstate New York to get a master's in mathematics at the University of Rochester, in Rochester, New York. And then I went to UNC and I got my PhD at the University of North Carolina Mathematical Statistics Department. So the PhD was in mathematical statistics. It wasn't in biostatistics. And in fact, the thing about those 4 years in my PhD program, I didn't like it. I mean, it wasn't fun because I never saw a number during those whole 4 years. And I went to graduate school in statistics to try to learn how to analyze data and to be able to see numbers. And so eventually, during the time I was a graduate student, I got to know about that there was another school on the campus called School of Public Health. And they had a biostatistics department, which also had an epidemiology department. And I got some kind of a fellowship to work with somebody in the School of Public Health during my last 2 years as a graduate student, and that's how I got introduced to public health and biostatistics and epidemiology. So the mathematical statistics part was, that's how I got my degree, but I learned my epidemiology and my biostatistics while I was a faculty member at the UNC School of Public Health, starting in 1970. And I was at UNC from 1970 on faculty until 1993. From 1993 until now, I've been here at Emory. I've had a couple of years of sort of sabbatical trips. I was in Australia for 2 years. Nice place. So anyhow. And there's a couple of pictures of me in my youth. Sailor suit, sailor boy, cowboy, okay, what is this, February 1947, okay, the year that Jackie Robinson was introduced. Here is some more pictures. Here I am with the pompadour. Here's a little bit later. And one early sign, as I said here, is I've wanted to teach ever since I was a little kid growing up in Brooklyn, teaching some of my neighborhood friends how to play card games, later checkers, and still later chess. In fact, and I remember my mother telling me a long time ago that I was destined to teach. So I learned something early on that I was, So what's this?
I remember that picture.
Recognize anybody? Well, that's me in 1971 at UNC, and I'm teaching a course in regression analysis. It's a second level regression course. In fact, up until 1970, the only course that was required of MPH students in Chapel Hill was basic biostatistics. We started introducing second level biostatistics in 1971. But if you notice this picture, well, first of all, there's me with a beard and a little younger, a little different looking, and you notice that there's chalk on the blackboard, right? And back in those days, when you were teaching statistics, particularly mathematical stuff, you were teaching statistics, the only way you could do it, given what was available, was to write on the blackboard what you were teaching. The students would write down what you wrote on the blackboard on a pad that they had, and then they'd go home and try to figure out what you said, And to me, that was terrible. And that was the way most of mathematics stuff was taught. I mean, other stuff like if you're teaching English or history or something, a lot of faculty went in and they had slide projectors, and they came in the room with a slide projector and they put it up and then they talked about what the slides were coming. But to teach math, that wouldn't work because it would be hard to sort of understand a formula without having something that this is what you had at the beginning. In fact, I even sort of invented something. I don't want to really say I invented it exactly, but at some point I said, there's something about this that's bothering me about this, black chalk and blackboard. And what's bothering me is, again, the students they're just getting to write it down, and then they're taking it home and they're trying to learn it, and they're not getting to learn the material as the class is going on. So what I invented, so to speak, was the handout. The handout. Did I invent the handout? No. But I brought the handout. I started bringing I created handouts that was going to be about what I was teaching, and I brought it to class. So they had something. They didn't have to write everything down. They could take the handout and make notes on it if they wanted, and then they could go home and look at it so that they could actually concentrate on what I was doing if they were able to. If I was communicating okay. So I invented the handout. Did I invent that? Or what's his name invented the internet? Al Gore invented the internet. Okay. Now, here's another thing. When I was teaching, the first several courses I taught for a number of years was in introductory biostatistics for MPH students, not for biostatistics majors, for MPH students. And the most difficult part of that course for people to learn, which usually they never really wanted to be there in the first place because statistics had a terrible reputation for being boring and horrible teaching and stuff to teachers and stuff. So anyhow, the worst part of the course, the most difficult part of the course to learn was at the beginning, and it was about probability. What is probability? And how do you use it, and how does it make sense? And it was always, I don't know if you remember this, but do you remember permutations and combinations? You're learning about that? And when you started learning about it, you would get these questions that the teacher would give you, and you couldn't figure them out because they were too complicated. So I came up with this idea to develop a teaching module that would teach what probability was all about in the context of sort of a realistic example that had to do with data, and could teach what the rules of probability were about and actually give them something to lead into what they're going to learn later. So this was a module that had something like 15 slides, and the slides was sort of complicated. You notice that this is the first slide, and you notice there's two things on it. These are covers or something that had to be turned over in order to see what was underneath them. But the first thing that they would look at, they see this picture, and I'd say, well, what's this picture? What's in this picture? And they'd say, well, it looks like there's a bunch of people. Okay, yeah, it is. And how many people? 20, if you count them. Okay. And if you actually think about it, and you were trying to do some study about what was going on with these people, you notice that some of them smoked. Where? Yeah, I can't see it too well. Somewhere around.
There from the right.
And some of them had little dots on their lungs, so some of them had some kind of a lung problem. Maybe it was lung cancer, I'm not sure. So then I'd ask them, well, okay, how many people smoked? And they count the number of people who had cigarettes in their mouth, and it'd be 9. Okay, well, what does that mean? Consider the fact that you have 20 people you're starting with. So 9 over 20 was the proportion of the people who smoked, and that's an example of a probability estimate. So I was introducing probability through this example. And then I'd say, well, what's the probability or the probability estimate that somebody would have lung cancer? That was what, well, what's the probability that somebody would have both lung cancer and smoke? And then we got into the whole thing about, well, there's a whole bunch of different ways to talk about this. What about if they have lung cancer and they don't smoke? Well, when you talk about that, what you're trying to do is you're trying to take the data that you have, this is a simple form of the data, and put it in a sort of an array so that you can see what the data was sort of saying. And the array was what we call nowadays, what most of us in this room call nowadays, a 2x2 or a two-way table. So you could take this data and put it in a two-way table. And so I did that. I opened up these slats over here, and eventually I showed what was in the two-way table. And then I said, well, what can you do with this table? What can you do with it? Well, in this case, the question of interest, whether there was a relationship between smoking and lung cancer, in some sense. Those are the 2 variables that were being dealt with. And so I built a whole teaching module about how to talk about how you would get that relationship. And in order to do that, I had to bring in rules of probability and teach rules of probability in that context. And eventually, at the end of the whole module, at the very end, I showed a 2x2 table with some different data that was real data that described the relationship between weight and something else. I can't remember, weight and ulcer evidence or something like that. And it had a 2x2 table with numbers in it, and what I eventually showed was how you would take those numbers and combine them to compute an index that would describe the relationship. And what was that index called? What was that index called? A lot of people in there should know. It's called chi-square statistic. Okay? So I'm taking it as a real example. I'm introducing probability, and I'm teaching them something that's going to be useful later. I hadn't gotten into hypothesis testing and statistical inference yet, but they've already learned something about probability and how that translates into something that's real, that relates to something you're going to eventually learn later. And later they'll learn more about the chi-square statistic. Now, the second thing here on the screen that I'm showing, I'm only seeing one. There's another thing about to come up later. But the second thing I did was, again, trying to be innovative. What I said was, well, okay, I'm teaching this course. Can I, again, make it more interesting instead of having them read the book or having me come in and giving, doing that probability module was painful. I took a long time to make those slides, like 20 slides, and I had to do it right. I won't go into all that. But then I said, well, I'm teaching other things. I'm teaching about, distributions, the normal distribution, the binomial distribution. What are these things? Okay. Now I could just go into class and talk about it and show a picture of the bell-shaped curve and talk about that. But what I did was I came up with a bunch of ways of teaching about distributions and about what are called ways of doing statistical inference, like hypothesis testing and estimation and confidence intervals. And I did this using what are called slide tape presentations. The slide tape presentation basically was a bunch of slides, an audio tape that you would put into like you had to have some library situation where you put audio tape and have the slides there, and you play the slide tape presentation, and you'd be getting narrated on whatever the topic. This topic has to do with, what does it say? Distribution series part 4. And it has to do with computing percentiles of the normal distribution. And it was something that they wanted to learn about that. I mean, if somebody really knew about it and wouldn't have any problem dealing with it, they don't have to do it. But what I did is there were 7 slideshows, 7 different topics. And I made 10 copies of each of those slideshows. I also had what's called a viewing study guide that would go along with each slideshow. That would actually, what it would have would be, it would be summarize what's in the slideshow, it would have a practice example, and it would have a final sort of little test example at the end. So everybody that was doing that I had 10 copies of this, and I put them in the health sciences library at the School of Public Health, and I basically said, okay, in the next 2 weeks, I'm gonna be talking about these topics, but what I want you to do to actively learn about this material, I want you to go to the library, to the closed reserve, and I want you to, over the next 2 weeks, to pull, to ask the person, the librarian, for a copy of each of these things, one at a time, and go through all 7 of them to learn about them. So that's how I taught that. It was a different way of teaching it, and it was a way that the slower learner could really have a long time to learn the material. The faster learner might not even need to use it. So now, what I've now done with this, about 2 or 3 years ago, I've changed these slide tape presentations into PowerPoint, narrated PowerPoint presentations. I couldn't do it back then because there was no such thing as PowerPoint. It's the only way I could do this. Okay. But now they're available as PowerPoint, narrated PowerPoint presentations. And they're useful. It's about, now I never did a whole course. I only did it on several topics because I didn't have time to do a whole course. So anyhow, that's another little innovative thing I did. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Let me see, what am I doing here? I'm pressing. What's coming? What, press on that? Oh, okay. This is to show some pictures of what I look like over the years. Okay, right? This picture, now, you all know that I'm Jewish, but I look a little like Jesus Christ. I don't want to make that claim. But here I am playing the flute. Here I am, a picture of me who looks like Charles Manson. This is when I got my first teaching award. And I didn't know what I really looked like until I got this picture. Because you don't look at yourself, and when you have a beard, you don't really see yourself exactly the way it really, I don't know. I saw this picture and I said, and I shaved the next day. I didn't shave it all off, but this was too much. And then eventually I actually wound up with a mustache, which I used for a long time. So I changed my look, in some sense. So that's another one. Now here's, the next thing I'm going to show you is a picture of this is Larry Cooper, my longtime colleague at Chapel Hill, longtime basketball enthusiastic friend. He and I went to all these Tar Heel games. And this is me, with a beard. So I had a beard, I shaved it off, I had a mustache, I got the beard back, and all that. And this is the first of my textbooks called Applied Regression Analysis, which was published in 1978. And now it's in the 5th edition. And it's got 4 authors, and the last of the authors on this list is Eli Rosenberg. Where is he? Where are you, Eli? There he is, right here. Eli took this on and really did a great job. So it's now in the 5th edition. So we've got the editions. So there you go. That's the first book. Now this is the picture that was taken of me when I got my first teaching award. I saw this picture and I sort of winced a little bit. It's shade, but this is what I had. And this person who's giving me the award, this person is, anybody know who this is?
Bernie Greenberg.
Bernie Greenberg. Bernie Greenberg was the dean of the School of Public Health at the time I was getting this award. Well, Donna knows. And Bernie's son, Ray Greenberg, anybody know that name? Ray Greenberg was the first dean of this School of Public Health. And Ray Greenberg was actually, when he was a graduate student at UNC, he was a TA. He was one of my TAs in like 1980. So, well, one thing I guess I'm saying is I'm old. Anyhow, that's Bernie Greenberg. Okay. So, some pictures. Okay, well, here's another one. The first band I was in, when I started playing music together in public, I was in a folk music band. And that band was called Silkworm. This was 1981, and we had 2 of the people in the band, two of the guitar players, the 2 guitar, the guy and the woman here, they both wrote original songs, And occasionally we sang other songs that people knew, and I sang on some of them, like the rock and roll songs, and the rock and roll songs, I was there for comic relief, you might say. But we played in a lot of different places. We actually played in front of a big audience and 2,000 people in Memorial Hall on the UNC campus when there was the main speaker was a fellow by the name of Ram Dass. Anybody ever heard of him?
Mm.
What was his original name?
Albert.
Herb, what?
Albert.
Albert. Yeah, not Herb Albert, but, yeah, right. But, so that was the biggest audience. But anyhow, that was my folk music band. But we had started this band after a lot of famous folk music bands already been around, like Kingston Trio or Peter, Paul, and Mary. So we never really made it big. Well, we were good, but we never made it. So anyhow, that's another picture. Here's another one. What about this? What's this? Who's this? This is me again. This is 1982. And I was teaching a course in Milan, in Italy. And when I arrived in Milan, a couple of days early, I noticed that on the wall of the train station, I was on a sabbatical from Munich. When I was on arrived in Milan, there was a sign that said there's a half marathon going on the weekend, on Saturday or on Sunday. And I was a runner, but I wasn't a great runner. I wasn't a fast runner. And I thought I could do it, but I knew I wasn't going to win it. At least, But I ran it, and that's me running this half marathon, in Milan. Okay, so here's the second book that I wrote, the epidemiology research book, that had Kleinbaum Cooper and Hal Morgenstern, who was a graduate student in epidemiology and a very bright, I don't know what the right word is, pushy.
Driven.
He went to a summer session in Minnesota, which was taught, course was taught by Ken Rothman. And he came back from that summer session and said, you gotta write a book about what Ken Rothman was talking about, because that's really what's in epimethods. So he was a graduate student, but he was forceful on this. So I got Larry, Hal, and I eventually wrote this book. And it was the first, as I said, the first public textbook on what you might now call modern epidemiology. And there are other textbooks that came later. And the Rothman textbook that many of you heard about that actually has modern epidemiology in the title, that wasn't published until 1986. And the Mietnin textbook, now Mietnin was the original innovator of a lot of ideas about epimethods. But he wrote his textbook, a draft of his textbook, in something like, this is 1982, he wrote it in like in 1976, and he tried to get it published, and nobody wanted to publish it because nobody could understand it. And he was brilliant, but nobody could understand it because he wasn't writing, he was Finnish originally. And so we used to say, he probably wrote it in Finnish and then had somebody translate it into English. And it was really, but he's sort of the father of modern epidemiology, but he didn't, and he's got to wrote a book, and he's actually, we're still in touch about writing another book. That's another story. Okay, so that's, okay, now, here's another picture. This is a completely different topic. Laughing yourself to health. Now, when I was at UNC, I was always interested in humor. I mean, I wanted to make my class relaxed and happy, and, sort of make things funny or enjoyable in class. And I found out that there was a humor institute that was a national institute and was located in Saratoga Springs, New York, and they had an annual yearly meeting. Okay? And so I went to one of these meetings, and I saw people talking about how humor is very important and something that should be incorporated into whatever your work situation is. It's not simply telling jokes. It's like you want to make the people, whatever the situation, you want to have people relax and enjoy themselves. And so I came back from this, and I was very enthusiastic about trying to do something. And I met some other friends that I had gotten to know over the years. And we formed an organization called the Carolina Humor and Health Association, Carolina Ha Ha. And we went around the Durham, Chapel Hill area. We went to hospitals, we went to various classes, and we talked to them about humor is very important in everything you do in your life. And we went to hospital to cancer patients, or people who were very sick, or people who were maybe even in the work environment that needed to enjoy what they're doing a little bit more. So we talked about Carolina Ha Ha. And it's no longer around, but we started back. It was an attempt. Okay. So I'm getting close to being done here. But this is another picture that was taken in Chapel Hill in the early 1980s, and there's Dr. K over here. There's an arrow pointing to Dr. K. You see this arrow? Who's that pointing to?
Yeah.
Dr. Tolbert. Look at Paige Tolbert in whatever that was, 1981. What a beauty, right? Still a beauty. But there she is in 1981. And there's a bunch of other people who were graduate students. There's Larry Cooper. There's Harvey Checkaway, who is a well-known occupational epidemiologist. They were all in this picture, but that's just a picture that Edna found and wanted to put it. So, okay, next picture. And in 1994, because I had met somebody, I was asked to teach a course in Madrid, and the person who organized the course had a friend who happened to be the King of Spain's physician. And I was in Madrid, and I was having some problems with my back. And he had ways of treating back problems. So I called him up, and we got to know each other, and after the course was over, I went to Mallorca, and I met him, and he invited me to come to his office. And eventually we got to know each other, and over the next few years, he arranged for me to be knighted in a castle in Mallorca. So that's why I was actually in it. So the knight in Spain, you're a caballero. You're not a knight. I don't know, you're a caballero. And this is a picture of me being knighted. I didn't get a crown or anything, And this is a picture of the ceremony, So not everybody you know is a knight, and I don't know what I think about that now, but in any case. I think actually Bill Clinton was knighted in that castle too, a few years later. So then I moved to Emory, and that's my first year or two at Emory, 2001. I was there, actually started there in 2003, but it's a picture just about the time I got, this is RSPH, but this is just prior to my coming to Emory. And this is a picture of what the ActiveEpi CD-ROM looks like. It's this multimedia way of teaching epi methods that makes it interesting, because there are ways of doing presentations to teach epidemiology that have automated, narrated, animated ways of teaching it, and they're not long. It's like not a long chapter. A chapter would have maybe 10 5-minute things in there. It wouldn't have one long chapter. So this is the first thing that I published, and I published it with the Springer Publishing Company, and this was in 2003. And there was also a companion text that came with that. The companion text, that was because if you were looking at a narrated, animated presentation and you wanted to be able to see what was being said, you wanted to have a copy of the text. So I had this companion text that went with it. So those are two things. And then the next thing I'm going to show you is just near the end here. Next thing is I got this teaching award. And this is this Career Teaching Award. I was the inaugural recipient. I got this in 2005, the ASPH Pfizer Award. I stand there, and lots of others, but I was the first one to get that. This is just a picture of that. Beginning. There's my band that I formed in the late 1990s, the Moonlighters Jazz Band. This is one version of the band. Of course, there's me with a different shirt on. And everybody had their own way of way of dressing, you know. And the band over the years has changed. We've lost a drummer, we've lost a piano player, we've replaced them. So it's anyhow, that's the Moonlighter Jazz Band. Now here's another couple of pictures here. This picture up here on the left that I think I'm pointing to. You see the shirt I'm wearing? Okay. Now you can't see it that well, but what this shirt is, this shirt has all the uniforms of the Major League Baseball teams on this shirt. I used to wear this shirt to the day that the season started, when the baseball season started, or the day that the World Series started, or something like that, to celebrate the fact that baseball is now in. So I would wear that shirt, and then I'd walk around the room and have people look and try to find their team and all that stuff. And then the second one is after doing a lot of short courses in different places for many years. And I did most of them with Larry Cooper. In recent years, I've done a lot with Mitch Klein. But we did so many of them that sometimes we sort of wanted to kid around a little bit, to sort of make things more fun for us. So there was one class that we decided to come to as the Blues Brothers. So here we are, the Blues Brothers, teaching this class. And it went fine. I mean, we didn't get booed off the stage. And we were teaching. We just were dressed this way. So there you go on that. Okay. Now, here's a picture of me getting the Emory Williams Award here at Emory in 2000 and I don't know when, actually, 2007 or something like that. So there's Dick Levinson up there. Okay. Now, the next picture here is this picture on the, well, there's two pictures up here. The first picture up here is me sleeping. Okay. Now, I've gotten really good at that since I retired. Because what's happened is, I sit down and, in one of our rooms, to read a book, and I start reading my book, and after 2 paragraphs, I'm asleep. And I wake up and I say, what happened? And I said, I should be reading this. I wanted to read this book. And I start reading the next 2 paragraphs, and I'm asleep again. And I say to myself, hey, wait a second, that's not right. I'm going to force myself to do this. I did it again. Fell asleep again. So I don't know what illness I have. It could be just the relaxation of being retired. It's letting me sleep. So here I am, sleeping. Okay, so that's just illustrating that. Now here's a picture that about, I don't know how many years ago, it was 10 years ago? We took a trip to England, and we did a walk, an 8-day walk in the Cotswolds, where we had our luggage taken from one hotel to another. So we didn't have to carry it, we just brought it there. And we had descriptions of how to go from one place to the next place where the luggage was going to be, and we were crossing fields, going over fences, looking at cattle and horses and whatever it was, to try to get to where it was and follow the directions. So this is one of our stopping points where we had lunch, and I'm in the middle. Edna took this picture, and the other 2 people are 2 good friends of ours from Australia that I got to meet and got to be friendly with when I was in Australia. That went on the trip with us. So I took 2 trips. We took 2 trips with the same 2 people. The next year we took a trip from Stratford at Avon to Oxford. Same type of trip. Great trip. And the thing about these trips was that they weren't that complicated, because they weren't that difficult physically, because we weren't climbing hills. There were some trips where you have to climb some hills. I didn't want to do that. You didn't want to do that. So who's this? Okay. This is a Halloween party that Edna and I decided to get dressed up as Groucho and Harpo. Now, when I show this to a class now, they don't know who I'm talking about. Right? Who's Groucho and Harpo? Anyhow, there's Groucho and Harpo. Okay. There's me playing the flute. In some context, I don't know what it is. I'm actually dressed up, so it might have been a party at your house. It's a Christmas party, I'm not sure. Okay. Now, so here's another picture. I'm near the end, here's another picture. This is Edna and David dressed up for, I don't remember what the party was, but how about those shirts? And this shirt on the right over here, this shirt that I'm wearing, was a shirt that my class gave me about 10 or 15 years ago as the shirt at the end of the semester, which I continued to sort of get over the years. This, of all the shirts, this is the one that was the most outrageous of the bunch, you know. And you can't hardly tell, but if I walked around the room, the classroom, with this shirt on, it was like a disco shirt. It was like moving around. It was sort of like, you know, it was really, you know. So I wore the shirt, and Edna had something sort of similar, you know, wasn't quite as like this, but that's us dressed up this way, using these shirts. But what about this? Well, I taught a course in Brazil, okay? And the time of year that I taught the course in Brazil was around the time that they had, what do you call it?
Mardi Gras.
Carnival.
Yeah.
Okay. So we taught the course, and then we went to some town. I don't remember what the name of the town was. We didn't go to Rio. Florianopolis. Okay. And so we were walking around while everybody was celebrating, you know, Hanukkah, or celebrating, you know, this. Okay. And this is one of the people I met. The guys were being dressed up as women, so I mean that's just a picture that you found somewhere. So I put that in there. This is another picture, and it has Edna and I, and it has John and Linda K. McGowan. Where's John? John somewhere. Oh, they made it. Okay. John and Linda K. McGowan are in there, and we took a trip that I believe Viola took with Kevin. You flew to Vancouver, I think, and you took a train that went to Banff and Lake Louise. And this was on a trip that we took. This is in Lake Louise. This is a picture where we were in Lake Louise. Okay. I'm almost done here. Okay. What's this? It's a picture of me with somebody else. Who's the other person? Dick Levinson, and in fact, he's wearing that same shirt. Where is he? Here, did he leave? I don't know. But wearing that same shirt. And he won the prize for the most creative. What did he win the prize for? For the best shirt. But you also had a contest for something else. Yeah. Anyhow, that's the shirt he wanted. This was when I was 60 years old. Some more pictures of me playing the flute. This picture over here where I'm wearing a suit and tie, there was an article in the Emory magazine a year or two ago, and over a number of years the Emory magazine was writing articles about faculty and their secret lives. So there was an article about me and my secret life as a flute player. There's another situation when playing in a club. Anyhow, okay, so now this is the picture of the author's website for ActiveEpi Web. So if you want to get on and get to use ActiveEpi Web, you would click on this, and then you'd get to this website, and then there would be another link that would allow you to sign up for ActiveEpi Web, and you could use it, and you can sign up, and you can use it for free whenever you want to. So it's free, anywhere in the world. Okay. So. That's the shirt, you know, even though I have these shirts, occasionally, but rarely, I have a suit and tie that I'll wear. And it's what does it say? All dressed up, Emory 2016. And this is the last slide. A good teacher is like a candle. It consumes itself to light the way for others. So, thank you very much. I'm really glad you
great. Thank you so much, David. And I know you'll be busy, but I do hope during your retirement, I do hope you can get some relaxation as well and some good time. But please don't forget about your friends at the School of Public Health. Thank you everyone for coming. There is more drinks and food. Stay as long as you want, and see you soon. Thank you.